Hey, it's the podcast guy.
Sutton United Talk Time on podcast. It's the Sutton Podcast.
And there it is! Sutton United at the GM Vauxhall Conference have put out First Division Coventry City, winners of the FA Cup themselves less than 2 years ago. And what a moment to enjoy for the fans of this Surrey side. They've had their moments before, but never one like this.
But the whistle goes down. Delight for Sutton United. Sutton United from the National League are through to the last 16 of the FA Cup. No longer English football's perennial non-league club. A 123-year crescendo reaches a new peak for Sutton United, who are promoted to the Football League for the first time.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Sutton United Talk Time on podcast. It's the Sutton Podcast in association with Lucky Star Gin. I'm your host Mike, and today we are discussing the news that Matt Gray and Sutton United have parted company. We've quite a lot of people over the next two nights on the show, so I won't do individual hellos to everyone like I normally do, but hello to everyone. And there may be others doing video contributions as well, because I've decided to make it really hard for myself. We'll see how all that goes. Obviously, engagement is important. Likes, shares, all the normal stuff. Please make sure you engage with @Sutton Podcast on all the social medias. I was given instructions from my wife: don't be out there yapping for ages and sitting in your chair rocking and weeping. 30 years we've been together. She's used to disappointment, so I suspect she'll get another disappointment again in a little while. It's well known I was a supporter of Matt, and I genuinely believed he would come good. The achievements of the club are exceptional, and he was actually one of the longest serving managers in the EFL, which is always bizarre. Personally, he's done a lot for the podcast. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have quite as many guests, let alone listeners, if Matt hadn't come and supported us so often, especially the time just before the Pizza Cup, where he gave me so much of his time in the run-up. And I probably, in hindsight, didn't take as much of an advantage of his generosity and a sort of accommodating nature. But I absolutely wish him well. There is a kind of format this evening, but I've made it up on the cuff, so we'll see how it goes. We're going to start off with people's thoughts, memories of Matt's impact at the club. I'm sure bits of this is going to be repeated, especially as I say, we're doing it over a couple of nights. It's fine. If it gets repeated, it's absolutely fine, because a lot of people are going to have the same thoughts. So what we'll do is, if we could start off with Andy, what's your kind of thoughts, memories of Matt's impact and his time at the club, first of all?
Well, the first thing to say, obviously, is that he took us to somewhere we never thought we'd ever be. That overrides absolutely everything. We never thought we'd be a league team. No one in their right mind thought we'd be in the league team, and he took us there. You could argue that it happened in the COVID season. We got very, very lucky with injuries that season. It doesn't matter. That's what he took us there. No other manager managed to do that, and it took for us, I think, probably a good 6 months to a year to even realise, we're a football league club. What? Hey. It's a bit strange. That's the main thing. But there are other little things, across the board. Like, I think my first positive, strong memory was the match at Torquay in his first season, where we were bottom of the league, we were bottom of the form table, Torquay were top, we went there and we beat them. And it suddenly felt, we could do this. And he was getting a lot of flack before that. He got us into a decent position. That season was curtailed. We could have been in with a shout with the playoffs for the end of that. Yeah, fantastic. As a long-time Sutton supporter, playoffs in the National League, that's an amazing achievement. And then, of course, the following season happened, and we were all of a sudden up there. And then that first crazy season in the Football League, going to Wembley, beating teams we should never really been in on the park with, competitive-wise. We're playing them as equals. And just going, playing Bradford as an equal, it's just bizarre. So having that, and those memories won't leave you. Touch wood, they'll stay with you to the end of time. So I'm exceedingly grateful, and I feel really quite sad today that it didn't work out.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of that's going to be repeated. And Neil, it's over to you to do the first repetition.
I'm going to try not to. I'm going to sort of agree with absolutely everything that Andy has said. I think we won't realise how good Matt was and what he did for us until we're sort of looking back, because I don't believe we'll ever have it quite as good as we've had in the last 5 years or 4 years of Matt's reign, and it's. The overriding memory of him as such is that what just a nice, approachable, ordinary person he is. He seems to be universally sort of loved and respected by the fans out there and the other clubs, the managers in the other clubs. I don't know of anybody who's got a bad word to say about Matt Gray, and I think that is an incredible testament for the man in the world of football, which does have a habit of being, nasty, at times. So that's it, Mr. Nice Guy. And I feel like it's a bereavement today, personally, because I was very much in Matt's camp.
Yeah, lovely. And Stuart, your thoughts?
I mean, he's exceptional, Matt Gray. He gave us that match, that Hartlepool match, which is exceptional. That 3-0 win took us into the EFL, League Two, somewhere where we thought we'd never be. I mean, when Doswell left, I thought we were going to be struggling. We absolutely flew with Matt Gray. I mean, that match is so amazing. I even wrote my English coursework on it.
Did you?
Yeah, got a 9. And I just thought, like, at the end of that match, I was like, Sutton's going to be in FIFA. This is just like, I would never have dreamed this. And then the cup run afterwards in the first season, beating teams that we didn't have a chance against, like Wigan, 2-1 on penalties. That was just one of the best games. The FA Cup final is just outstanding. It's just memories that are just going to be there forever now. So I'm absolutely gutted that he's gone. But
the BBC put out on their statement that we lost that final on penalties to Rotherham, which was interesting. I was sure that didn't happen. But Dan has momentarily left us, so we will give him a moment if he wants to try and reconnect. One of the things that I was quite proud of was that when the statement has gone out, overwhelming majority of comments were sort of along the lines of what Neil was saying, that everyone was wishing well. And if you look at it objectively, we've got a manager that's just lost 8-0. We're bottom of the league by a distance, and all the fans are quite sad that he's leaving. I understand the reasons, but quite sad they're leaving. Dan, we don't have a picture of your beautiful face, but we can hear you.
No. Yeah.
What's your memories of Matt and his impact and his time at the club, and what your message to him?
I mean, you can only really echo, especially what Andy was saying. I mean, he achieved something that no one ever thought was possible. He got us into the Football League. I mean, that alone, that's why after basically effectively 2 seasons, he's in the club's Hall of Fame, and with good bloody reason. We didn't think it would happen. As memories of him, I mean, games stand out, obviously, things like Hartlepool and going to Wembley, but for me, games like the Pizza Cup semi at Wigan, what a mad old night that was. And also, just to touch on what Neil was saying earlier about just being, he's just a nice guy. He's a good human being. He's a solid bloke. He's honest. He's very, as you said, very generous with his time. We are very lucky at Sutton that we do get kind of access to people like that. A lot of other clubs probably don't get that. But I remember when he first started and he had that early spell that wasn't going so well, like Andy mentioned. And one of the things that was bugging everyone at the time was that we didn't leave anyone up from corners when we were defending them. And that was seemingly something that no one could understand and no one could really get their head around as a tactic. And there was one afternoon after a home game, and we were just talking about, why weren't we getting results? And it happened that Belly went into the gents. There was Matt, they were both stood at the urinal, and it's all right, and they had a chat. And Belly was like, not really, a few people are grumbling in the other bar. And Matt's instant response to that was, give me a sec, there's a pint waiting for me in the VPs, I'll be round in a minute. And lo and behold, of course, 60 seconds later, he's bowled in with his pint. Right, what do you need to know? What questions have you got? And it wasn't, he didn't talk down to us. He didn't talk to you like you're an idiot. He's a qualified coach, we're not. But to him, he was talking football. And that's what, he, over anything, he's a massive, massive football fan, as we know from him doing the football quizzes at the club. And he didn't have to do that. He could easily have gone, oh, bloody hell, a bunch of drunken dickheads in the bar at 6, 7 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon talking complete crap, who don't understand, don't get it. None of that. Came in and basically talked us through a few things, what he was trying to do. And yeah, I think that at the time we weren't getting the results, but that gave me an immense respect for him as a person, as a man. He didn't hide. He was always up front. And if you had questions and you could catch him in the bar, he was always happy to talk to you. And I think that's probably the overriding thing, that he was just a very genuine, honourable guy. And that above all else makes it, quite as sad as it is that it's finished the way it has.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Andy said it earlier. It is like a bereavement at the moment.
Now our first video submission with Andy.
In terms of memories, I think the first 2 seasons stand out for me. The first season had a difficult start, but when it clicks, I think it was around this time of year, and some of the matches really stand out. So that's just like the 3-2 against Yeovil, 6-2 against Woking, the 3-1 against Wrexham. It was really good football to watch and lots of goals, and that was a real contrast to the previous season under Doswell's last season, which I thought was quite uninspiring. And of course, the promotion season, it was great when we were finally allowed back in the stadium when we got promoted. But actually, just throughout that season, we were all locked down and no one could, you couldn't go out, you couldn't see friends, family. But the one thing you could do was stream the Sutton matches, and there were so many good wins and performances that year. That's what I think of. I think about going to maybe our spirits being kept high during that difficult period by Sutton's success. So that's what really stands out for me.
And Scott, what are your thoughts on your memories and Matt's impact?
I always thought Matt had the biggest shoes to fill from DOS, but he took it in stride and just propelled us to another level. Obviously, favourite moments, getting us to the EFL, winning at Hartlepool to win the title, the cup run to the Papa John's final, meeting them in Sutton Town Centre, having a look at the trophy. Going to Wigan that night was incredible, and getting home at 5 o'clock in the morning and going to work at 7 o'clock was probably one of the best footballing moments of my life. And just his aura, just before when the players were training, he would come round and talk to you, and he might crack a joke and crack a smile. Even this season, when the pressure was on and you could tell that the pressure was on, he would still make time to come round and talk to you, saluting the crowd when we had a good result, good victory. He became one of us, and that's what I loved about him. I can't thank him enough. This is the morning after the night before, if you can say that. I'm gutted, absolutely gutted still. I really wanted him to turn it around, but hey ho, you never know.
And now to Will, what are your thoughts on this?
Getting a football club with a very non-league feel into the Football League is a pretty remarkable achievement but managing to keep them there for quite a while is also just amazing. I think Matt did many really good things at Sutton, but keeping Sutton within the Football League was obviously one of the most complex tasks he ever had to do as a manager here at Sutton, but he did it ever so well. And even though things were going really against him, and as he says quite often, he didn't really get the rub of the green, he managed to keep them just 6 points adrift. And the amount of injuries and uncharacteristic mistakes that players have been making, it's not necessarily his fault, but he's done really well to keep Sutton within the fight for survival. So whoever takes over has got a good chance of keeping Sutton up. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to do that, and a change, it kind of was necessary. But Matt's done ever so well, and keeping Sutton where they are, where he got them, is probably one of the biggest achievements. I think a lot of Sutton fans will agree with me on this point. Matt's assessment of games, goals, and how things played out was always spot on. Whether it was a win, a draw, or a loss, the way he'd sum up a game was always honest, and he just couldn't be more to the point and on par with what the fans would see as well. A lot of managers, you may see a bit of cliche and they try and hedge around a point, but I think Matt was very honest in his summary of games. Doesn't matter what went on and how it turned out or what the outcome was. Matt's a very honest individual, and I think that's really interesting at this level because it builds rapport with the fan base. And as you can see by the reaction on social media and by word of mouth, there's no real negativity about Matt leaving. It's people just can't believe it because he was such a huge figure on the field and also involving in quizzes and just having a pint in the bar. He was just an amazing individual, and I think a lot of people will miss him for just even the smallest things he did while here at Sutton United.
And Louis, over to you.
Memories and thoughts of Matt's time at the club. It's just amazing. The man worked so hard on and off the pitch to make the club better, to improve everything. It gave so many memories, going to so many new stadiums in the EFL. Looking forward to watching something during lockdown with all the streams and everything like that. Obviously, the usual highlights of Wembley and the game against Hartlepool, but things that stick to mind like the win at Tranmere in our first season, the win at Crawley in our first season, the win at Wimbledon last season. It was a very sad moment today when I found out that he would be leaving the club.
And now for the thoughts of Chalmers.
So, memories and thoughts. Early days with Matt, he was a bit up in the air, wasn't it? The Billericay game is the one that comes to mind in the FA Cup, where we thought, we're making silly mistakes here. It was a real what's going to happen, what's for the best here, but obviously proved sticking with him was the best course of action at the time, and so glad we did. And yeah, everyone's obviously got the same memories of getting us to Wembley. I'm gutted I missed Wigan in the semi, but the Wembley Cup final for us to run so close with Rotherham so close was amazing. Great day, one we'll never forget. A bit like the league run, really. So gutted we couldn't be there, but it was a hell of a ride, and for us to get as far as we did to make our way in the Football League. It was just absolutely amazing, and really happy with everything he has done with the club up until a little bit more recent times, unfortunately.
Okay, so Gabriel, you're first up for my second batch of people contributing. So let's start off with your memories and thoughts of Matt's impact at the club. Obviously, you kind of joined shortly after the FA Cup run, so Matt's like your manager, your only manager for almost the whole period. But what are your memories and thoughts of his impact?
I started following Sutton in the season 2020-2021. Which had three games that were open to spectators, and I attended two. I was my first game live from Sutton that I saw was against Solihull. It was a 4-1, very beautiful victory. And then I've been there for the promotion game, which was so surreal. Looking back, it feels like an easy win, but it wasn't. And I remember that at the beginning of the second half, Armstrong scored for Hartlepool, but the goal was cancelled because of handball. So it didn't feel like an easy win, but it was such a beautiful victory. Unexpectedly, Sutton wasn't having a great run of form before that. They won narrowly against teams that were not were bottom of the table, like Woking and Barnet. Not Barnet. Barnet was in the last league. I don't recall now. Yeah, but that was a beautiful moment, and it was only 1,000 people there. I remember that I had a season ticket, so I had access, but the tickets online were gone in a few seconds, the remaining tickets. So I'm sure that a lot of fans remained outside for that game. Long-term fans, not like me. And after, it was the first season that was so amazing. We started bad. It was that frustrating defeat at home against Oldham with 2 goals in the last few minutes. And I felt like it will be a struggle for avoiding relegation. We were bottom after 4 or 5 games. And then it turned to such a surprising performance. We were third. We felt even to be in the fight for direct promotion. There was a game up against Bristol City, Bristol Rovers. Sorry, that was we were so unlucky to draw, and from there they were second half of the table, and they started to climb, and we started to go down. So our luck, I felt like shifted in that game. And if we have won it, and I think there was a post in the last minute or something like that, if we would have won that game, we would have been there for the direct promotion. And then, of course, it was that AFL race, which I followed every game. I remember, except the Wigan, I don't go to away games, and I was watching on TV, and the emotions were too strong, and I cheated a bit because I was following the live score on Bet365, which was ahead of the TV transmission by 10 seconds. So I knew Dino will defend that penalty, and I was shouting in the house before it happened on TV. And of course, Wembley, with the bittersweet memories. We were so happy for the whole game, and then everything went down in the very last minute.
Alex, what's your kind of memories and sort of thoughts of Matt's impact on the club?
How do you follow that? Yeah, I mean, having been a fan for a bit longer, maybe I can speak to the fact that whilst we had some incredible success before, obviously the cup run of 16-17 with Doz, I think the way I'd summarize my memories of Matt is that he allowed me to experience being a Sutton United fan in a way I didn't think, or at a level I didn't think was possible or would ever be possible. You consider he didn't have much experience, and he came in and he had COVID to deal with, and we'd only relatively recently been promoted to the National League itself. The idea of winning the National League, finishing a point off the playoffs in League Two, going to Wembley, then being mid-table again in League Two the season after was just, it's a cliche, but beyond anyone's wildest dreams. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think anyone would have seen that coming, and to do it. And I think that's the sort of memories on the pitch, and obviously incredible times we had there, but also him as a bloke off the pitch, just absolutely incredible. Just always time for anyone, whether, it's someone who goes to the games regularly like we do, or anytime I brought someone down and bumped into Matt and say, oh, it's their first game, take the time to chat with them, get him involved in Sutton United, answer any questions, always in the bar after the game, win, lose or draw. And it's those elements that I think I'm going to miss the most, actually, is him as a person. Obviously, we want success on the pitch, whoever's the manager, and he brought so much of that. But yeah, as I say, him as a person is my overriding memory of him.
Okay. We've done the same as the guys last night, and Sarah, I'm sure you're following the same way, but it feels like it's bereavement therapy. But what are your thoughts and on Matt's impact and your memories, Sarah?
Well, it kind of goes back to when Paul Doswell left, and that felt a little bit like being dumped by a long-term partner in a way. It was like a breakup. It was really emotional, and there was a lot of speculation about who should come in. And then when Matt's name came in, everyone was like, "What?" nobody quite got it. And a lot of people were sort of saying that the club had made a bad decision. I was like, well, let's see what it's like. And then I think his first game in charge was a 3-1 win at Hartlepool, or his first competitive game in charge anyway. And everyone was like, oh, okay then. That seems to be all right then. I remember that game really well because of kind of Matt being an unknown quantity. We want to see what his team was going to play like. And I remember being really impressed over that season because I don't want to compare him to Paul Doswell as such, but hey, I'm going to. Dos is very emotional as a manager, and he wears his heart on his sleeve, and that rubs off on his players, and he uses that emotion as like a driver to get results, particularly in big games. Matt was kind of the exact opposite. I was really struck by how professional and workmanlike his teams tended to be. And it felt like he didn't kind of let emotion come into it, which is both a blessing and a curse, I think, in a way, particularly when you've got issues come up that might be psychological. But I think I was just really impressed by how kind of his team handled itself. And I think that was quite a big part of what led us to the league title in a way. Because with some of the teams that we're up against, you had to be, and with COVID around, you had to have that sort of approach as well, because you couldn't mess about really with that going on. And then, I mean, I suppose most people will be mentioning the day we actually won the National League title, and that is obviously a day that none of us who were there will ever forget. It was really bizarre, really surreal. It felt like a strange dream. A cross between a dream and a pre-season friendly. Really strange. And I remember kind of going up to Matt afterwards, and kind of we were having pictures together with the trophy and stuff, and I was just thinking what a nice guy he was. Like he would, always have a smile on his face, and he always he's just a nice person to talk to. And I remember thinking, I'm really glad we've got this guy in charge, because one thing that really impressed me about him was how he would pick players for his team and make a point of making sure that they were nice people, they were decent guys. He wouldn't have people with a bad attitude in his team, not just because you wouldn't get good results out of people like that, but because he cares about people. And I've always had time for him for that reason. And obviously, this season things have been a bit difficult, but he's never had a bad attitude about it, I don't think. He's always tried to stay positive, and I really respect him for that.
So first over to Paul for this section of where do you think it went wrong this season?
Well, I'd say it started going wrong around Christmas 2022, really, didn't it? We sort of dropped off after Christmas a little bit, and then we sort of made our way to 50 points, and then it just went hugely downhill from there, didn't it? We just weren't showing up. I don't know if we were found out. Did it really take 18 months for people to find us out? We're quite one-dimensional at that time, and continued to be so. The tactical side of things was, I think, a lot of people's bugbear a little bit. 4-4-2 is so unusual nowadays, and seeing how other teams play against it, they just take such advantage of it, you know, overloading midfields, and we've seen that so much as well, haven't we, this season. We need to change that, I think, and going forward, hopefully with the new manager coming in, whenever they do, hopefully tactically we'll be a little bit more savvy, and we'll have a plan B and C and D maybe if we really need them. So let's hope so. Let's see where we go.
And Will, for you, where did it go wrong?
You can't overlook the summer transfer window. There was a lot of departures, and there was a huge number of new players coming in. A lot of them came in late as well, so Matt didn't really get to have the full pre-season with them and mould them into the type of players he wanted. Maybe that's why we've seen Harry Buteman playing quite often on the right or on the left, instead of some of the new players who haven't quite had the time or the full pre-season process that Matt would have wanted them to have in order to mould them into the players that he wanted in his team. So the benefit is a new manager can come in and use the terrific players that were brought in to their full potential, but maybe that's the reason that things didn't go so well. It was good recruitment, the players were right, and the system seemed to work on occasion, but they were just unable to find consistency in between the offloading and influx of new players.
And Scott, for yourself, when did it start to go wrong?
It hasn't been really good since the back end of last season. You know, our form towards the end wasn't great. And the beginning of the season, you know, we played quite well at the beginning. Notts County, Barrow, we've done all right. And then it just seems to be, I think, from Wimbledon. Wimbledon at home was the sort of point where I felt, oh, this ain't right. Something's not right here. I don't know. The results just haven't been good enough. And Saturday, the final straw, I felt, you know, as a professional, you can't lose 8-0. That's as simple as that. You can't lose 8-0 and not feel the repercussions, especially when you're bottom of the table. The only saving grace is that the teams around us are not picking up the points as well. So we're only 6 points from safety. But I can understand the board's decision that they felt they had to make it now, with transfer window opening in a couple of weeks.
And Louis, your thoughts?
Where did it all go wrong? It's probably partly, as always, injuries have had a massive hit. We can't say that Eastman missing 75% probably of the games this season and not having a settled back four haven't helped. Maybe tactics can be changed and should have been changed. Maybe the less direct nature, maybe, as most people have probably said, could have been changed. But, you know, for what he's done at the club, you know, you can't leave the blame solely on him for what's happened this season.
And Andy's thoughts of where it went wrong.
I guess where did it go wrong? I do think it's connected to the style of play. I think one, it's that style of play, the brand of football, requires high intensity. It's physically maybe more demanding than maybe more of a passing game, and it can wear players down. And I think that's what you saw last season. Towards the end of last season, it didn't look like the players wanted to play or be over or were doing what Matt was asking of them. So very logically, he changed the players, but I'm not sure if the ones that he brought in were any better. Like we've seen dissent towards bench from players through matches we've all seen it. I remember Umami Patrick, for example, but I think there's others, and yeah, but they weren't playing for him. They didn't want to play the way that he was asking them to. But the thing is that he's not the first manager in that situation, and I think of like Marcelo Bielsa. He again in the high intensity and demands a lot, and eventually the players can get worn down. But what I'd say is that if you look at what happened to Leeds after Bielsa and after they sacked Bielsa, or say like Burnley after Sean Dyche, they still get relegated, and sadly I think that's going to be the situation we're in as well.
For you, Neil, where did it go wrong, and why? Obviously, as Dan's mentioned, none of us are coaches, so we've only got to get it from our point of view on the stands. But for you, where did it kind of go wrong? I mean, for me, I know we were on a bad run at the end of last season, but that can kind of be excused. For me, it was probably Salford that broke quite a few people. I certainly remember the Salford match going, yeah, I can't even face doing a podcast tomorrow. So it was that one for me. Obviously, as I said, even up until Sunday, I was still in Camp Matt. But for Neil, where did it kind of go wrong for you, and why? I know we can all repeat ourselves again, but start with you, Neil. If you come off mute.
Sorry about that. I'll mute again. I don't think it's any one specific thing. I think it's just an unfortunate combination of many things. Didn't get the rub of the green in all those matches that we lost after the Notts County, which was probably one of the most perfect afternoons of football I've ever witnessed. Things just started to go wrong. We didn't get the bit of luck. Smith gets sent off at Barrow, and then it just became cumulative. We've had, the bad injuries. We've had 2 years of bad injuries. Cashgett breaking his leg. That was, doing his ACL. That was unfortunate. We've been without John Barden for such a long time, who would have been a great utility person to help us through some of the injuries, but he wasn't available. Perhaps Matt's the criticism of him with his seemed to be a bit intransient with his not wanting to change the tactics and still play things in the Sutton way. But I think ultimately the best team that we've had on paper isn't capable really of playing the Sutton way. We've lost that in your face, not being nice to play against. We've given too many teams the opportunity to play football against us, and 90% of the time we've been punished for it. And perhaps the players coming in just haven't had some of the bottle for a fight, and it could be some of the character of some of the players that have come in has to be called into question. So perhaps Matt and the team didn't get that right. So I think it's a combination of all of those sort of things. But everybody says when they're on a bad run we've been unlucky, but I genuinely do think we haven't had any breaks, and we have been unlucky. Okay.
Well, you touched on one of the comments that I'm sure the next person may expand upon, but Dan, the same question to you. Where did it go wrong, and why for you?
I think it is, again, touching a little bit on what Neil's said there. I think the recruits we made this summer, even people on the outside looking in were, whilst they weren't, wow, that's going to blow the league away, everyone was quietly, actually, people were fearing for us because, people like Omar had left, Will had left, there was a few faces who did leave, and quite a few people did say, well, that might see them in trouble. But then we slowly accumulated these signings over the summer, and the general sort of opinion seems to be, well, actually, that's not a bad side. It's not going to tear the league up, but it's capable, And then we added Amari Patrick late in the window, and everyone was like, well, actually, that could see him, comfortably competitive this season. And then, as Neil says, I don't think whether it's either Matt has decided that he wanted to, not only stabilise but have an opportunity if the team were in good enough form to push on. So he's gone for slightly more experienced heads, slightly more seasoned pros, shall we say, who've been around this level, and kind of assumed that experience would mean that they would buy into what is, I think, Simple's doing it a disservice, but it's a fairly straightforward system that we play. When it works well. And I think it's a case of either the new faces haven't bought into it, or they haven't quite. They've not been up for. They've just not been up for it. You know, maybe it's too much like hard work, or it's you know, you've got to be super fit. It's hard working. It's physical way of playing football, and maybe they've just not quite bought into it. And unfortunately, I mean, it has become plain in quite a few games this year that there isn't something just it wasn't right. I mean, you obviously need to be in the management team or on the training ground to know exactly what the issues are. But from the outside looking in, from the terraces looking in, you've got players back-chatting the bench, which is not something we've seen before. The players are arguing with each other. You know, Saturday, first, when I said on Sunday's podcast, first goal went in, everyone turned on everybody on the pitch, everyone was coating each other off, they were arguing with the bench. And that's not come from us constant bad results. It's been like that since quite early in the season. We were seeing that in games in sort of September a lot. And yeah, I know what Matt's trying to do, but it just hasn't worked for whatever reason. I mean, losing Eastie's been a big blow in the middle of the park, because I don't think the centre mid pairing has been anything like what we had last year, quality-wise. They don't rob ball. They can't get us going quick enough. And that alone has also really hurt us, because we've got exposed wide. But the one thing we've seen this year is a lot of sides have been doing us right up the middle as well a lot. And when you pressure a back four constantly, it's going to give way eventually. So yeah, I think it's a combination of things. Maybe Matt tried to change too much too quickly. Maybe he thought, you know, he tried to be a touch too ambitious for for the resources he had at his disposal. Maybe he misjudged the guys he signed. For whatever reason, when it's gone against us this season, the side hasn't really shown enough resilience, enough that old school fight that we had that got us here and got us to nearly the playoffs in the first year, and also kept us up reasonably comfortably last season.
Yep, quite right. Sorry to you guys and everyone listening for turned my camera off instead of the microphone, so I coughed down everyone's ears then. So I do apologise. But Andy, what's your thoughts of kind of where it went wrong and why?
For me, I've got a slightly different take. I think his success was his failure in the end, in terms of his approach. Now, his approach as that kind of very calm, stable influence was probably what we needed after the Doz period. Doz was very much highs and lows. When it was high, Doz was great at getting people G'd up for the big games, but he was rubbish against your maidenheads. Whilst Matt wasn't like that. Matt was a lot more constant. But the problem was, it almost felt like, and this is more subconscious, that it got a little bit complacent. It was like, oh, this worked before, I'll just carry on doing this. And it became, actually, probably about last year, it became a bit of a running joke that you knew exactly what substitutes Matt was going to put on the 70th minute, without exception. It became exceedingly predictable. And then that works okay when you've got players that have been playing with you for a couple of years. But then you put new people into the mix, it suddenly starts becoming having a strange dynamic. And I think the whole kind of Matt, and I honestly believe Matt believed this himself, about the whole thing where he kept saying about, well, I haven't had time to train with them properly. And it's like, I've got games in the middle of the week, I've got time to train properly, which is a fair enough argument. When you get players like Murray Patrick in right at the end of the window before the season starts, it's going to take a little bit of time, August, maybe in September, for that to happen. But he was still kind of clinging on to that in November. I'm like, well, if you don't know your players now, and your players don't know how you work, then you've got a problem. And then, of course, we've had the last 2 weeks where he's literally had, and from what I've heard, he was very hands-on with his training. And the end result was we lost 8-0. So I think it was, for me, it kind of felt like that he genuinely believed that he had the right way of doing it, but he didn't realise that the pieces around him were changing, and he couldn't have that adaptability with that. I think, to be honest, I don't think any of the signings that we've made are particularly bad.
No.
Some are very good. I don't think anyone can doubt that, the signing with Harry Smith and getting Aidan O'Brien on loan were actually, compared to what we had last year up front, massive improvement. But again, as Dan said, losing Eastie in the middle, I think it showed up the vulnerability of our defence a lot more. I think you don't realise how much Craig Eastman protects that back four. And as a result, I mean, I don't think anyone can say, even when they were fit and so forth, that players like Louis John, Rob Milsom, or Ben Goodliff were playing anywhere near as good as they could do. I think, actually, the game I remember was Swindon away, when we'd gone 3-0 down after 25 minutes. And the defence were just all over the shop, absolutely all over the shop. You had Rob Milsom, who was obviously knackered. You had Joe Kizzy was having an absolute shocker. Yeah, it just Ben was trying to do three people's jobs at once and not doing any of them. And it just looked really disjointed. But again, Dan had a really good point: is that we've lost that fighting spirit. That fighting spirit that we had in our first season, where we'd get last minute goals. Well, that was gone last year when we let in so many last minute goals. So I think, it's kind of like everything around changed, but Matt stuck to his tried and tested way without not realizing that things around him had changed. And I think having gone to almost all of the away games, some of those, Doncaster, Accrington, Swindon, and Stockport in particular, it's just, you walk away from that thinking, I've spent a good part of £100, doing this trip today, and I've been rewarded by the same mistakes, the same problems, the same bad ideas, and the same routine that we've had. So it's sad, but I think it was kind of like Matt. I don't think he didn't want to accept it. I think he just genuinely believed that if he just carried on doing exactly the same thing, it'll be fine. And it wasn't.
Stuart, your thoughts on where it's gone wrong, and you may well repeat.
I mean, everyone sort of said everything I was going to say. I mean, the season looked hopeful. Looking at the transfer market, who we brought in, we're bringing in players with championship credit, like Aidan O'Brien, Dino coming back on loan after playing with Reading, Amari Patrick. I mean, on paper, great players, and you could even see like players like Harry Smith and Omar at the back, two really tall players. They were sort of fitting the philosophy of Matt Gray's football. And then beating Notts County 5-1, I think there's false hope. And then Cambridge on pens. I was looking forward to the season, and then we just kept losing matches that we could have won last season. We were losing to Barrow, Gillingham, Wimbledon, Newport, teams that we could beat. And then that Forest Green Rovers match was the sort of the first time I felt like we might be in danger here. Obviously, no one gets relegated that early in the season. My dad did calm me down though, so and he said it would eventually click. Yeah, and it hasn't clicked. I mean, we were losing 4-1 Accrington Stanley. I mean, who even are they? And then Crawley beating us 3-0. They were close to relegation last year, and they were absolutely running the park with us. And then even that Walsall game where we won 4-0, it looked good on paper, but that match when I was there, that easily could have been 5-4 Walsall. They just were awful at taking their chances. And yeah, I don't think it's necessarily just Matt's fault. You can't just blame the manager and say it's just him, because at the end of the day, it's the players as well. But he just played the same style of football each game, thinking that it'd click eventually, saying that he needs time with the players on the training pitch, and that it will eventually work, and it just didn't. So I think it's just gone wrong there. Just not enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot cheaper to change one person at the top than it is to change 27 players if it's not working, and that's why clubs do it.
Yeah.
Alex, you're up first on this one. I've already made the point. I have kind of said, for me, it was. I think it was the Salford game that broke a lot of people. To be like, this is the point of no, this is no good. Other people have got different opinions, but where do you kind of think it went wrong this season? And obviously, as we also said yesterday, we're not coaches, so we're not expecting you to give an exact answer. But why? Where has it gone wrong a little bit? For your opinion, Alex?
Yeah. The first thing, this might sound slightly bizarre to say, given that we lost 8-0 on Saturday, but I actually don't think it's gone quite as wrong as a lot of people are making it out to be. I appreciate it hasn't been the start to the season that any of us would have wanted, but 6 points off safety with a game in hand. Appreciate game in hand's not necessarily was far from a banker when you're down at the bottom of the table, but we're not miles and miles and miles away. There's plenty of football left to be played this season. But I think 2 points really. I think number one is off the field in the summer and losing 12 out of 24 players, literally half of the playing squad. No matter how good a manager you are, and Matt is, that's very, very difficult to recover from, to galvanise the group again, to get chemistry, to get the squad gelling, etc. And okay, I appreciate we had a bit of a freak result on the first day of the season against Notts County, but I think subsequent results have shown that it's really hard to do that. And secondly, I think the first time I really started to have concerns, I think, actually Wimbledon at home, because that was a thumping. And I appreciate it's early, and as I say, it wasn't a panic button or anything, but that was we were outclassed that day, and having beaten them twice last season, I think it just showed how much things had changed over the summer, and to go 0-3 at home to our local rivals was a big hit for everyone, I think. And as I say, it was early on. It definitely wasn't a panic. Sometimes those results happen, but I think if you're asking for a moment on the pitch where I started to consider that this might be a tougher season than perhaps we'd expected, Salford's a good shout, but I'm thinking of something different, and I'd say Wimbledon. But as I say, it was some of the factors certainly beyond Matt's control.
Sarah, you got second on this go. So for you, where did it kind of go wrong, and why, if you want to stab at it?
I've also been thinking that it kind of went wrong when we lost half our squad, because I know it is a cliche about the team spirit being the 12th man and all that, but this club has really thrived on that over the last few years. A lot of our success, it's been very clear, has come from a squad that has bonded together really well, who know each other inside out, and who are just so used to working with each other and are happy together. And then suddenly we've got a lot of, the squad was almost decimated in the summer. And I mean, injuries haven't helped as well. It's rarely the same people playing from one week to the next, it seems. And I think certainly that will have played a big part in how our season's gone. I don't have a clue what happened on the first day of the season against Notts County. And I'm not quite sure where that blip against Walsall, where we won 4-0, came from either. But unfortunately, that was a blip, wasn't it? I've always had a positive outlook. I'm always someone who'll be optimistic. But there has been low points this season where I've really thought, I can't see any way out of this. 2 4-1 defeats spring to mind against Accrington and Doncaster, where it just looked like, not that the team wasn't interested, they did look interested, but it looked like they didn't really know how to manage the game. And I just thought, well, how can we fix that? How are we going to come back from that? And just not coming up with any answers. So this was a depressing question you asked, Mike.
Yeah, I know. It's a depressing situation. Gabriel, what are your thoughts on sort of where it went wrong and why, if you fancy having that?
It is absolutely obvious that replacing half of the team in summer is the main cause of this fall. It's out of discussion. It is very hard, practically, if the defense is more or less the same with the addition of basically Omar for most games, but the others are even those who played at Wembley 2 years ago. In the offense, there's no one left. They had to redo everything from scratch, and it didn't work. Strangely, it seemed that at the beginning that the problem is the defense. We were getting too much goals, but I feel that the problem lies mainly in the midfield, actually, where the coverage for the defense is not sufficient. This is why we ended up with Ngesan after a few games to cover up more. This is why we ended up with Patrick out of the squad. What we played 2 years ago was defending deep in 8 players, having Olafe or Donovan Wilson at the center of the field, trying to play long balls on them and to counter-attack or to do pressing. We scored a lot from interception made by Olafe or even by Bugil. We don't have the players to do that now, and now we are limited only to the crosses towards Harry Smith. We lost a lot of these other options that we had. I feel that with the players that we had 2 years ago, of course, we would be still in the top half of the league, even with this style of play. On the other hand, there's a point that was made by some. Football has changed. We want it or not, but football has changed drastically in these 2-3 years. Yeah, everybody passes. The shock for me was to see that Tranmere, which is a very, very modest team at the bottom of the table in this league, that was doing passes, connecting every ball. Not one ball was sent randomly. Okay, every ball was sent to a colleague, to his feet. And I feel that Tranmere have themselves to blame for not winning 3-0, at least here, because we weren't able. There were some fellow fans behind me commenting how many passes we are able to link, and the count never passed 4. Actually, once, but for half an hour we counted, and the count never passed 4. And we are behind. We are behind, and the tactics is okay. If we had the players, it could have worked, but we don't have the players. We have good players. I've read today, because I remembered the discussions yesterday on your WhatsApp group, and I was shocked to see the CV of O'Brien, the CV of Clay, Ryan Jackson even. They don't show. They don't show that CV and that experience here. Craig Clay is a player that can be blamed for 2 of our away defeats for giving away stupid penalties in the very first minutes of the game. How can a player with his experience do that?
I want to move on to now to the thoughts on the decision and the statement kind of together for me. I wonder if it's. I don't know. This is really personal, but I wonder if it's fair if he doesn't get the crack at the FA Cup third round, which is the one thing he hadn't achieved at Sutton. Lots of people have pointed out, had we pottered around in the National League for 5 years, mid-table, he'd still be in the job, a victim of his own success. The wording of the statement and other messages and conversations I've had, it's clear that there was some heartache with the decision-making process. But Stuart, for you, I'll let you go first this time. Was it the right time, wrong time? Would you have given him more, or has it come to its natural course?
To be honest, I think it was the right time for Matt Gray to go. I've been one of his biggest supporters. I thought he'd turn it around, and maybe if we gave him a bit more time, he potentially could have. I mean, he might have earned himself a relegation. Seems crazy to say, but he's definitely overachieved with the club, so he could have gone down, had a rebuild. But as a club, seeing the statement, and I think we're now looking a bit more forward thinking. We've only had 2 managers in the past 15 years, so we're obviously very generous with time to our managers. But this is a bit of a different way that the club's working now.
Dan, what's your thoughts, or was it the right time? What did you think of the statement?
I think reading the statement, you could tell that it obviously. I thought it was actually quite a good statement. The club, it was succinct, it was to the point, but it also got across the point that the club, whoever had made, the board had got together and made a decision that it was with, a heavy heart. We all know that, I think Matt certainly bought into the Sutton United kind of culture, the way, it's a very tight knit, it is an old school effectively a perennially non-league type of club, and we still do have a lot of that there. He bought into that, and I think a reason for that is because he was given, when he first took the job, he had that rough spell in his first season, up in that run up to that Torquay game, but everyone could kind of see what he was trying to do. It just was, it'll come. And when it did, everyone was delighted for him because of, the guy he is. But also, I think he genuinely, and again, this is just my opinion, I've not spoken to him about it, but I think he genuinely appreciated the fact that it was his first gig in management, and the run he went on that first season, so many clubs had fired him after 5 or 6 games without a win. And I think he knew that, and I think he really appreciated that the guys at the top, Bruce, etc., stuck with him and said, no, look, that's not how we do, generally how we do things. We don't do knee-jerk decisions. We don't jump into stuff. Just do the job. We trust you. If it gets out of hand, we'll tell you. And I think he really appreciated that. And I think that made him just work that bit harder. And he really wanted to give so much back because the club had shown him so much faith. And by balance, a lot of the fans had as well. So, as for was it the right time? Yeah, I think it was. I mentioned this. I was talking to someone else about this, and they asked the same question. And the way I look at football is, if I can see something, there's a spark there, or at least, something there to give you genuine hope, like. If we could maybe, you're a player short, you can see, if we could get a left back, or if we can just get a centre mid in there in January, we're not a million mile away. That gives you something to we're at least going in the right direction. We weren't. The performances were way too erratic. You look at 2 of the 3 wins this year were by 4 goals over teams in the top half of the table. But some of the defeats we've had, you mentioned it, I think it was the Salford game really broke me as well. I think that's where I think for a lot of people, questions started being asked. I think up to that point, he still had credit in the bank, but that Salford game was a bit kind of, what was that? And it never really kind of recovered from there. But we had too many performances like that where you stood, you watched it, and you didn't get the impression that it was going to get better. And after the result we had on Saturday, the way the team performed, certainly in the first 25 minutes, was unacceptable. Both to the club as his employer, but also supporters. It just wasn't. There was no way on earth watching that you could think that was ever going to turn around. You could keep hoping, that's fine, but it wasn't going to. I just got that impression. I think the timing was right. Also with January coming up, we've got the January window. We're into a busy period now. Make the change now, give someone else a chance to look at the team and think where they can make changes and maybe turn it around.
Okay, thank you. Andy, what are your thinking on the decision timings and the statement?
Yeah, timing fine, statement fine. I think both of those probably came at the right time. I think they took me by surprise because having been a long time Sutton supporter, I know we never sack managers. Even in the dark days of Ian Hazel sending us down to the Ryman League, we didn't sack him, as I was corrected on the forum. We should have done, but we didn't. So this is the first manager that I can remember that we've actually sacked. And I kind of wish it wasn't. I kind of wish that Matt would kind of have read the room a bit more and said, actually, no, I can't take this any further. I can't fix this. But, you know, we are where we are. I think, you know, again, great points have been raised. If Matt was at any other club, he probably would have gone at the end of September. The club were very, very clear about how they were going to support him and understood. And it actually made, you know, some various blogs saying that actually Sutton are not doing the knee jerk that everyone else does. It's not like, you know, sacking Neil Harris at Gillingham when they're 8th, sort of thing. There was plenty more reason in terms of how we're doing to sack him, but we didn't. We stuck with him. So, but I think, I think Saturday was such an appalling mess on and off the pitch that I think the board really just ended up having to say we can't accept this. But also the board are also thinking, right, this is not us accepting relegation. Okay, if we're accepting relegation, we'll stick with Matt. You know, but this is the club giving a strong message to all the supporters and the other teams around them, saying, actually, no, we're going to fight this. You know, if we're going to go down, we're going to go down fighting. We're not accepting anything. And you know, there's been plenty of people that said, "Oh yeah, we're going to get relegated. We're going to get relegated." Well, still over half a season to go. We need to get 6 or 7 points more than the teams around us, and we'll stay up. It's not impossible. I think the club have taken the approach of, actually, no, we're going to fight for this, and I think that's quite a significant change to previously, where they would have accepted their fate a lot easier because the stakes are a lot lower. The stakes are very, very high for us. If we go down with the increased money for the teams in League Two, if we do manage to get back up again, we're really going to struggle to survive. So, yeah, I think timing is right. And I think the fact that they've not rushed into appointing anyone else yet, and Jason is going to be taking the team on Saturday, means this is not something that they've been planning for a while. This is something where that it's like, well, actually, no, we've just got to the point where we can't do this anymore. We've got Christmas coming up. This is going to give us time to actually get someone in for the start of January to go for there. But yeah, apart from that, no issue with the statement. I thought it was really well worded. Timing, yeah, absolutely right.
Perfect. And Neil, your thoughts on the decision and the statement wording?
The wording is typical Sutton, and they've said Matt will always be welcome at the club. And I've gone on the various forums and said I wouldn't be surprised if we don't find Matt Gray back as a manager at Sutton in years to come in the future. You know, lots of clubs have gone back to managers to get them out of trouble. You know, those managers with the Midas touch. So as I said, that wouldn't surprise me. And I suspect if they've got rid of him, they've done it in the nicest possible way. And Matt has probably realised that it was coming. And I agree that I suspect I thought he would resign rather than having to be sacked. In terms of the timing, I think the timing is wrong, because if we were going to do it for it to have any impact, I think it should have happened a lot earlier for us to get the maximum benefit out of sacking the manager. It should have happened in September, October. Then the new man would have had a chance to come in and mould. Now they've got. We won't get anybody in over Christmas. Christmas, you know, the fixtures we've got to play are not the easiest of fixtures. We're very likely to end up with 0 points out of that unless we get a sort of, repercussive fight from, the 8-0 and we do scrap something against Mansfield. And that concerns me that, I just question about whether anybody coming in can do anything about it. The club, I agree. I think they realise we can't afford to go down because going down would be catastrophic because of all the money and everything that's been invested and the money that we potentially lose. And I suspect it's the new American money and things like that new directors that have come in have probably talked about, and that's probably the reason why we've sacked him. If we didn't have those new board members and that new money on board, I think he would still be in the post.
Possibly. I mean, they may well have also said they're not being part of that decision because they've only been there for a couple of weeks. So we obviously don't know, but we'll see. But Sarah, we're going to start with you on the actual decision. I think we've kind of all established we've gone back about 70 years and we can't see any other time that Sutton has actually sacked a manager. So it's a difficult decision. As I said yesterday, I've had various message conversations with different people who were part of the decision process, and the heartache and despair is there to see. I mean, it was in the statement. So what do you think of the timing of the decision, right time, wrong time, and the statement itself, and how people felt about it? What are your thoughts, Sarah?
I think it was inevitable. We couldn't carry on. I mean, it was clear. I mean, you know, following up a comment just now from Gabriel, there are a lot of players in our squad who are much better on paper than they've been performing on the pitch. And to be fair, I think you have to say that it's got to be down to the management of those players, really. We know that Matt's a very capable manager, but perhaps, you know, this club at this time of this squad isn't the right place for him. Who knows? It doesn't feel like it's right for the club at the moment, because obviously, look at where we are in the league, look at how our results have been going. In terms of the timing, I think it is the right time. Thinking about the January transfer window, and whoever comes in to replace Matt needs to have a bit of time to plan what they're going to do, because it might be that they feel that they can't do a great job with the players you've got at the moment, or they need to strengthen certain parts of the squad or let some people go. And there needs to be, I think the timing's might be pretty good in that regard. I was very sad to see the statement, but I think it was nicely put. I think, like you said, it was very clear that there was a bit of heartache involved for the club, and that just shows how much, you know, the people that run our club care, which is in a way heartwarming. So it was kind of a bittersweet thing, really. I'm really sad to see Matt go, but at the same time, I'm kind of not disappointed, just because I feel the right thing for this club is a big change, and I think we can't really do that without changing manager. And I'm sad to say that, and I'm sorry, Matt, but it's true.
There's a lot of similar thought process on that. Dan said very similar as well. Gabriel, what are your thoughts on the timing of the decision right or wrong? I think I know your answer, and the statement as well.
Was the last minute when this decision could have been made, because of what Sarah said, the transfer period that starts in a week. You have to have a manager before this transfer period who can bring at least a couple of players that he feels that it will help with his game, with his tactics. What I can say is that football is like this. You know, you had Ranieri. He basically lasted half a season after winning a title for Leicester. Instead of having the statue there, he was sacked in February. You have Otto Rehhagel, who won the Euros for Greece, that had absolutely no first-year player in that team. And even Denmark 92, which is a famous example, had Laudrup and Povelsen. But Greece had nobody. You cannot mention, none of you can mention one name from the national team of Greece 2004. But he still was sacked. And Sean Dyche from Burnley, he kept them 8 years there. You can see Burnley with Company, which is a great manager and a great former player, how they perform now. So this is what happens in football. He's a great guy, and it's not nice what happened to him, but it was do you want to stay in the AFL? Do you want to fight till the last second to stay in the AFL or not? You had to do it if you want to stay in the AFL.
And Alex, your thoughts on the right, wrong decision, timing of decision, and the statement as well.
Yeah. Okay. I'll preface this by saying that I think I understand how hard it must have been for the board, and no doubt they didn't take the decision lightly. And yeah, it must have been hugely emotional given how respected Matt is as a person, as we've touched on. I respectfully completely disagree with what's just been said. I don't agree with the timing at all. I think whilst Saturday was awful, of course, the previous 6 or 7 games yielded some decent results, some good points, including away from home, progression to the third round of the FA Cup, for example, which I certainly think Matt should have been allowed to have a go at, given that he got us there, and it's the one thing he hasn't really had a crack at. I think that I take the point that's been made about the nature of football. I think what I would say about that is we don't have to follow the nature of football. We can try and be better than the nature of football. And I think Matt has earned the right to stay longer than he's been given. I think, as I said, the mini revival of form before the weekend was important. I think going in, that could have been carried into the Christmas fixtures, the busy festive period, and into the FA Cup and into January. I think that he's earned the right to try and get a reaction out of the players following the Stockport result. I appreciate that was, as I say, a terrible result, but look at what he's done before when we've been on bad patches and he's pulled things together. Why couldn't he have used that as a way to galvanise the squad? I would have liked to have seen him at least be given the chance to do that. I think the financial impact, we talk about the transfer window, but the financial impact of terminating someone's contract and hiring in someone new, we don't even know who we're going to get. We're going to get, Jason's going to take charge on Saturday. He's a great guy as well, and no disrespect to him, but if he's going to be in charge on Saturday, why not give it to Matt to try and get a reaction following the Stockport result, as I said. And last but not least, I think the only way this works is if we stay up, because I appreciate that sounds like an obvious thing to say, but if we do stay up, I'll hold my hands up and say, well done to the board. I got that completely wrong. Great decision. But if we don't, then what better manager to try and bring us out of the National League than someone who did it in his first full season with us? Those are my thoughts. That's my disagreement with the decision itself and the timing.
And Louis, what's your thoughts on the statement and the timings?
In terms of the statement, I can understand why the club has made the decision it has, but I think it's a purely financial decision based on what the implications of relegation could mean to the club. When you consider how much has been spent on, building the new stand, taking up the 3G pitch, all of the sort of improvements off the pitch and the bigger squad budget, that kind of thing, going down would be, it's not essentially throwing it down the drain, but it would be a massive hit with the amount of money that's been spent. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that's on the board's mind, because in all honesty, if we hadn't have been promoted to the EFL, I think Matt would have been still in the job if he'd have got us in 10th position in the National League and a few cup runs in the last 5 years.
Thanks, Louis. And Andy?
I guess in terms of the timing, it's not a huge surprise because we've got 4 games in 10 days coming up, and a new manager bounce. Could we win 2 or 3 of those? Potentially we could. And what we can't afford is another 3 drubbins or 4 drubbins like we got at Stockport, because then the season's over. So it doesn't surprise me that way. I don't know if you've covered this before, but the funny thing is Matt's record over kind of festive period was phenomenal. So if you look at the between say 20th of December, 1st of Jan each season, all the fixtures that he managed us for, we won. We 100% record. So it's got a bit of a quirk, I guess, that we've actually sacked him just before that his best time of year. At least I guess to keep that record. But I guess that's why we've done it at this time.
What about you, Will? Was it the right time?
There's never really a right time to relieve someone of their duties, but I think a change maybe was kind of necessary given the situation. They're almost at the midway point of the season, and with only 3 wins on the board, it's just not good reading, is it? So something had to give, and unfortunately Matt's had to be the sacrifice in this situation. In the long term, it may be beneficial, but for short term, I think it's going to really affect the club, and it will have a long aftershock at all levels of the club, because Matt was helping out here, there and everywhere at Sutton United. But in terms of timing, maybe it is the right time, because whoever can come in has not just a shot at the FA Cup. It can't get worse in the league. You're bottom of the table, so you can really just give it all you can. And then you've got the January transfer window coming up, which gives them a chance to get the type of players, and if they've got any good links with clubs, maybe some good loans in, anything. Sutton just need some innovation in order to get off the foot of the table.
And how about for you, Paul?
So yeah, decision. Is it a surprise that it's come? A little bit, yeah. After an 8-0 defeat, I suppose it's always likely that it's going to be the final straw. You know, the results have really not gone fantastically well. We have been struggling, as I said previously, for a good time now. Recruitment's not gone well, has it? On paper it looked good, but it's not really worked. So many hopeful signings that really haven't worked out. I'm disappointed about the likes of Sawunni, who I was really keen for us to sign, and so happy when we did. And you know, we'll see what changes with these players, it had to happen. I think we would. I've said on the podcast before that if he goes, we're almost certainly going to be getting relegated anyway, because of the changes and how everyone reacts and the likes to it. But the more I think about it, I think I've changed my mind, and I think it is going to be more beneficial for the change. I don't think things would have improved enough if Matt had stayed. So I think the right decision was for him to go, and us be forever grateful for everything he's done. He'll always be a club legend. He will always be welcome, and I hope we see him down there at some point, and a few of us can buy him a pint, because what he's done for our club has been nothing short of unexpected, unbelievable, and yeah, as I said, forever grateful.
And he's got his thoughts.
I have mixed feelings about the sacking, the timing of it. I understand the board's point of view. Transfer window opens in 2 weeks. New manager, potentially bringing new ideas, new coaching staff, new players. Maybe play a different type of brand of football, which I think we need. I think the brand of football recently has been absolutely disgraceful, to be fair. However, as a love for Sutton, and you know, I respect Matt Gray and stuff like that, I would have loved to have seen him turn it around. I would have loved to have seen him have a crack at Plymouth away. As I said, I have mixed feelings. I think if you take the love of Sutton out of it, you probably can understand that from Saturday, you know, Stockport was awful. And I don't think any manager would survive that, especially in the position that we're currently in, and potential position that we could get ourselves in, because the teams around us are not playing very well either. We could go on a good run of 4-5 and we could propel ourselves out of trouble a little bit. But yeah, mixed feelings. I'm still gutted that he's gone. But I do understand in another way as well.
We're going to sort of wrap up a little bit with some final thoughts and sort of speculation on the future. Dan, we'll start with you. As Andy mentioned, we know that Jason's taken control this weekend. I did say for a long time that I felt that if Matt was going to go, then Jason would too. But then I said we wouldn't sack Matt either. So what do I know? But there's names been bandied around, some wildly speculative more than others. There was an interesting thread earlier, I think you retweeted it as well, with some various different names that I'm sitting there going, oh my God, where did that even come from? But I mean, what do we feel that any potential names that stands out for you, or how do you feel what players will benefit from a new manager? Is it going to impact the players in any particular way?
Well, it's going to impact the players, I guess, because they're going to have to sort of adjust to new demands, new philosophy from whoever the new manager is. I suppose you also have to kind of take into account of going back to what we were talking about earlier about what went wrong. Was it a case they didn't like Matt's system, or weren't they buying into it, or that kind of stuff? You know, what would they? Was it that they wanted to play a different way, or they were more comfortable playing a different way? So yeah, I mean, one of the ones that's been bandied around, Ben Garner, did make me chuckle a little bit, because that would be quite hilarious and would probably confuse the hell out of League Two, with us going from being big old ugly hoofball, long ball, nasty, rub your stubble in your face Sutton United, to beautiful tiki-taka play out from the back, stroke it around, and a million passes and that kind of stuff, which is what Mr. Garner likes to play. So that one did make me chuckle. I don't think that's possible though. As for the names being bandied around, I'll hold my hands up. I don't have a clue. Who's available? What can we afford? I don't think we'll be pinching anyone off another club, just purely because because of the budget constraints. I don't think we could really go for paying compensation. So it's probably going to be someone who's available already. As to who, though, I don't sit on the board. That's down to those guys and people like Tom Williams and stuff, and Gabe Sutton on Twitter to sort of, you know, ruminate on and give us ideas.
We need the engagement, Dan. Come on, we need to wildly speculate. Come on.
To be honest, if someone was talking about the Cowley brothers, I mean, we're talking about two guys who were managing in the Championship within probably 18 months, 2 years ago. So I don't think it'll be them. I actually, of the ones mentioned, I think the lad from Cambridge, Bonner, he looks like a reasonable fit. He's young. He's about 38, I think. He's available, and he's used to working with restricted resources, shall we say? You know, he kept Cambridge in League One last year when they looked absolutely doomed at one point. So he knows how to roll his sleeves up. He knows how to get a team grafting, clearly. So he looks a logical one. Whether he'd want to come to us at the arse end of League Two, and you know, he's just left a League One battle, we want to go into one in League Two, I don't know. But that was certainly one of the names I've seen bandied around. That's certainly the most interesting to me.
Fair enough. Stuart, come out with your wild speculation. Come on.
I mean, in an ideal world, Zidane or Conte. Cooper's just been available. You could bring in a relegation specialist like Allardyce. I mean, he's still available. Or you could try and sell Sutton to Pep. He's struggling at City. You could build a world-class team here. But speaking realistically, I think Mark from Cambridge, I think he looks the nicest option for me personally. He looks like a relegation specialist, might be able to keep us up. But whoever Matt's successor is, they need to have coached at a higher level just to show that forward drive for the club. And then whoever it is, I'm wishing them the best of luck, because those are big boots to fill left from Matt.
Yeah. Never really liked that term, relegation specialist. It should be survival specialist, because it's like, I could be a relegation specialist. Neil, who do you kind of think of the names that we've banded around and impact on sort of the club?
I don't really have a Scooby. I've been posting various sort of suggestions from left field just to sort of stimulate. I think from the budgetary situation, I think the only way we're going to do is to look down. So it's going to be somebody from a lower level that potentially the compensation that we'd have to pay to get them would be a lot less, because they earn a lot less further down there, and that might be the way that they feel they want to go. I don't think there's anything to be gained from promoting within. Jason sings from the same hymn sheet as Matt, so that would make no difference whatsoever. And any new manager coming in, then everybody who's in the back room will disappear. It's going to be completely new backroom staff, because otherwise it's virtually impossible for anybody else coming in. So I think potentially we might appoint Jason. They might try to appoint Jason, but I think Jason will follow Matt when Matt gets another job, because I think those two very much come as a bookended pair. So, but it's pure speculation. We don't know, and you spend a lot of money on a manager. You've got no money for any players. So, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. But I don't really have any idea on the managerial merry-go-round, I'm afraid to say.
Okay. Andy, I've left you to last because you've said all day it's too early for this conversation. So
yeah.
I knew I'd be scolded.
Rolling over a still warm corpse. Yeah, I've got a bit of a different take on it, and I've been quite coy on the various forums and so forth. But I will actually tell you who I'm thinking would be a really good candidate, and I'll be prepared to be mocked accordingly. So for me, it's kind of like, right, but let's look at this logically. Let's look for somebody with Football League experience. Let's look for someone who has worked in a kind of a similar-ish stature of club, or along those lines as much as possible. Look at someone who is available, so we don't have to pay any compensation, but also look for a manager who is trying to rebuild their own reputation, because things might not have. They've had good stuff in the past, but maybe their latest one hasn't worked out in the way it has for them. And looking for, do we actually just want the managers just to keep us up, or do we want the managers to keep us up and then keep us up the following season? So to me, it actually boils down. I can think of only one candidate, and I'm preparing everyone to laugh at me. And that one's Gareth Ainsworth. He's available. He's a very loyal club man. He has a very different character to Matt, which might be what we need to stimulate the current squad of players. He's worked with Dominic Gape, obviously. He's worked with Damani Mellor, even if Damani is not going to be with us. He's still, there's still a connection to at least a couple of players there. He has a very big black book of various players that really a lot of players that have played for him absolutely love him. He has that kind of pull factor that, the kind of the Doswell pull factor, people coming to the club because they wanted to play for Dos, even though they were probably almost too good at places at times in our previous lives, where he would actually, get into good players. So I think for me, he's ticking a hell of a lot of boxes. And I've looked at the latest betting. He's let's just have a quick look. He is currently
He's on there
in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th favourite to go. Bonner from Cambridge is top. Steve Cottrell, previously of Shrewsbury, is second, and Jason Cliff is third. So I think he could potentially bring a hell of a lot of stuff to Sutton, and bring it in such a way that actually it will be like, well, this is a real sign of intent. We're not trying to just get the same thing that we had before. We need to do something different. If we carry on in the same direction, we're going down. And if the statement of intent from the club is we've sacked Matt because we want to stay up, then they have to try something different. And maybe he might not have any interest in coming to Sutton, but he does live locally, or local-ish. He knows League Two pretty well. He knows the roster of players that we have. I could see us doing a lot worse than picking him if he was interested in the job.
Okay, that's a far more sensible option than my wild speculation, which isn't overly wild. My wild speculation is someone who is a friend of the club. They're out of work. They're known to the board, and they live locally. And it's unlikely, but it's Alan Pardew. He's back from Greece. He does live in the local area, and I know he's quite friendly with the club as well. But
talking of that, another suggestion that came up was Chris Powell. who's currently coaching where he's coaching, but he's local. He lives in Banstead, I think. And yeah, he may well be tempted to come and have a crack. Who knows?
As long as he doesn't bring his brother don't like me because I kicked him at goals. He's big.
Scott, let's hear from you about your thoughts about moving forward.
I think you're expecting the new manager to come in and get that immediate bounce, picking up wins, which will really help us, because I felt we've been quite lucky this season in that when we've lost, the team around us have lost or not picked up maximum points. I think in previous seasons we would have been long gone by now. So that's what we're hoping for in regards to a new manager. For me personally, I'm not sure who should be next. I've heard of Mark Bonner, potentially. It depends who the club can afford, really. But I hope when they make a selection, it's on the basis that, you know, we still want to continue our trajectory of going up. You know, I don't want us to look down and go, well, we might be in the National League next season. No, I want us to be firm that we want to stay in League Two. I want us to propel up. You know, we've seen such great improvement over the last, 4 or 5 years. You know, I don't want that to stop. I want us to keep looking to improve. So I will back the new manager, whoever it is, like I've backed every single manager we've had since '98, since I've been going. And yeah, up to yous.
And Chalmers, any speculation from you?
Speculation going forward, new manager. So I've had on our little WhatsApp group, I posted a few names, and I posted Woodman, Hinshelwood, I can't think who else, Saul, who I think is someone who in my eyes would probably be the more likely one to come in. He's the only one of those three who doesn't have a club. So I think us paying a compensation fee is unlikely. So I would say Sol is a possibility. I'm not sure. I mentioned McMahon as well, actually, Daryl McMahon, but I'm not sure if he's managing at the moment or not. I can't quite recall. So it needs someone outside of the club, I think. I'll be honest, I'll be disappointed if Jason gets it. I don't think it'll be a big enough change. I think the players will be too comfortable if it was Jason going forward, and I don't fancy Ben Garner either. I don't think he's done enough at, where's he been? Bristol Rovers, Swindon, Colchester, Charlton. Not really set the world alight at either of them or been very successful. Mark Cooper's a name that's been mentioned, and I really don't fancy him at all. I don't like his attitude. I think he's a very negative manager, and it's not someone that I would consider. He's in a job as well at Yeovil, obviously, and I don't think jumping the two divisions is ideal. I don't think it would work. Saying that, I did mention the name. I mentioned Hinshelwood at Worthing, who is doing a good job, but yeah, in hindsight, probably wouldn't work without the league experience. So yeah, I'm glad it's not me making the decision. I hope it is a name that fills us with some confidence. I hope it's given the manager is given some finances to bring some players in, and the squad is given a good upheaval, a good going over. The impact on the players, wow. I wonder if any of them will step up to the plate, or many of them will step up to the plate. There's players who have proved, I feel like they've proved they are not capable of this standard anymore, or ones who have stepped up haven't really done enough. Some have, I don't think Geston's he's not been the best, but he's not done huge amounts wrong. He has been asked to do a lot for the player he is, the progress he needs to be making. I think a lot has been asked of him, and I think he could still progress. We need Eastie back desperately. Defenders, we need to step up. They were solid at times for a lot of last season. Up until certainly till Christmas at least. We need players to get their heads back on and get some form back. And hopefully, with the change of manager, they might step up the plate a bit and start to perform again, because performances have been so poor. We need something to improve, and quickly. We need to be in games, not trying to just defend for a draw. We need to be looking to win games now, and lots of them. So we need to have an attacking style, but be solid enough to work as a unit to do what we've got to do to get some 3 points on the board as quickly as possible. We need 10-12 wins in total this season, I think. So we're 9-10 more, maybe even. I don't know, but yeah, we definitely need to pick things up. Let's see where we go from here.
And now for the thoughts of Louis.
In terms of next appointment, preferably an external one. I think if we go internal, you'll just end up having a similar sort of playing style and similar messaging giving out. So I think an external one, albeit it has its risks, think is the option for us to give us sort of a fresh impetus and a fresh idea as to how we can go about the rest of the season. In terms of names, Mark Bonner is probably the best one out of the lot out there who aren't attached to a club at the moment. He's done it before at a club who have worked on a low budget in a league with clubs on big budgets. He's got Cambridge promoted from League 2. He's kept them up in League 1. And he started off the season really well this year, and was really unlucky to get the sack, in my opinion. Even to make the job more attractive, just give it to him on a short-term deal to the end of the season to see if he can keep us up. If he doesn't, then you can look towards next season, build with a more long-term, maybe a different approach, maybe going for an up-and-coming young manager like Elakobi at Maidstone, or the Worthing manager whose name escapes me. But they're two young managers who, if we do get relegated and we have to appoint someone new in the National League next season, are ones that potentially we could look at.
Andy, how about you? Ready to move on?
Almost feels too soon to think about other managers, but I saw Mark Bonner's name mentioned, which I ironically think he did a very similar job to Matt at Cambridge, and it was about 3 or 4 years. He got them promotion. This season's been more difficult, and he's been sacked. So ironically, quite similar to Matt. So I've seen his name mentioned. I don't really know too many of the others, but we need to get someone in quickly. The next 10 days is too important in terms of the number of games we're playing. We need to get some points on the board. So hopefully we just act quickly and we can start to pick up some points.
And the thoughts of Will Lawless.
There are some really interesting names after just a day or so of Matt being relieved of his duties, so it's a very interesting time for everyone involved at Sutton in terms of who's going to be next. But I think Sutton need to be careful. They don't want to rush this decision, and they don't want to take too long, because as it stands, Sutton are only 6 points away. Within 2 games they could be level with whoever's outside of the relegation zone at that point, or they could be double points adrift in 2 games' time. So they need to be careful. You can bring in a manager and they can try all these different things, and it may not work, and they may be in an even worse position than when Matt left. So Sutton do need to be careful, because it's taken them quite a while to get to speed with becoming an EFL team, and by the time they can finally say, look, we've done it, we've ticked all the boxes, they may be saying goodbye and getting relegated. So that's not what they want. They need to be really careful about this and take their time. So hopefully they don't rush the decision, and we can enjoy a new manager.
I'll start with you, Alex. What kind of names have you heard? Would you like to chuck into the ring, or did you want to hear what was said last night first?
Well, we can hear what was said last night first. I think what I'd like to say on it is that I haven't really. I saw there were a couple of threads going around on Twitter, or X, maybe I should call it, yesterday about potential replacements, and perhaps it will work to give it to Jason on Saturday. Maybe he'll have the chance to take full reign in it, and it'll work. I really hope it does. I think the thing I'd like to say about the replacement is that I do trust the board to pick a good replacement. As Sarah's alluded to, when Doz left, they chose Matt, and most of us went who, and he was absolutely fantastic for us. So whilst I was perhaps slightly critical of the board in my previous answer, I would just like to say that I have full faith in them to pick someone who they think and will be the right person for the job. The main thing, though, is that I hope that we get someone who is as good as a person as Matt was. And again, that's something that Sarah touched on at the start. Football results come and go, and success come and goes, and there are good times and bad times. But one of the things I always admired about Matt was his level-headedness throughout. The highs were never taken too highly, and the lows were never suffered too lowly as well. So my primary goal for the replacement is someone who is able to fill those attributes. As for names, I'd take Steve Cooper in a heartbeat. I'm sure there are those better qualified than I to speculate about managers, and I'd be interested in the names that were said last night. But as I said, I hope it's someone who I look at and am proud for them to be the Sutton United manager in the way that I was with Matt.
The most speculated name is the ex-Cambridge fella Bonner. Then last night we had chucked in Chris Powell. Apparently he lives in Panelists, so he's quite close. Andy chucked in Gareth Ainsworth as someone who needs to. He's good with the small resources of the club, just like Sutton, and wants to rebuild his reputation. I wildly speculated that maybe as a short-term measure, even someone who's friendly with the board, who is quite local, who's got lots of experience. He's out of work, but Alan Pardew for maybe to the end of the season, but probably just wild speculation.
Mark Hughes had a picture with Jenny last season, didn't he?
He did, but he does live a little bit further away. So
commit to the club.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, but Gabriel, what kind of thoughts have you got about the future? Any sort of wild speculation from yourself?
I don't know much about managers in this level, but I read the Gandermonium's post on Twitter, and it was two names that I would have thought I would have preferred with the little information that was given there. The guy from Cambridge, and there was another guy who was sacked from Colchester a few games ago, and since then Colchester lost every game they played. And Dan said also that he played at junior level here in Sutton or something like that. So he had a connection with the club. So I feel that he could be a solution. Don't ask me the names because I didn't.
It was Ben Garner, and he plays a very, very different style of football than we do at Sutton at the moment. Who knows? But it would be a drastic change for the playing personnel. Sarah, we never expected Doswell. That was a one out of the blue all those years ago, and that was a name we'd actually heard of. Matt, although it was a name we heard of, it wasn't the right Matt that we heard of at the time. It was the wrong Matt. It was different Matt Gray. But have you got any kind of thoughts on the future, or any sort of wild speculation, or same as Alex, just like this is the type of person
You kind of answered that for me in a way, Mike, because I was going to say that the club sort of seemed to have a history of pulling a rabbit out of a hat. And it's not what we expect, is it? I mean, with Dawes, he kind of just walked into the club and said, I can do a job here. And they're like, oh, okay. It was obviously very different with Matt. But to be fair, I don't really do wild speculation. There's been a lot of names bandied about. I've looked at each of them and gone, all right, yeah, okay, yeah. But I thought long and hard about who do I actually want to come in? And my conclusion was basically, I don't know, because I don't know what's going to happen, what effect they're going to have, how they're going to fit in at our club, how they're going to fit in with our squad. And I just want someone who is maybe a tough ask, someone who can do something with what we've got on a shoestring budget. Someone who's skilled at doing that, who knows people, you know, you can get good results out of people. Like when we won the National League, you could argue, and no, let's say our first season at this level, actually, that's probably a better one. Our first season at this level, no one expected us to do as well as we did. Everyone thought we'd finish bottom. You know, we finished at one point outside the playoffs. We got to the EFL Trophy final, for goodness sake. No one expected that from the players we had. Matt was someone who could obviously get something amazing out of players. You wouldn't be expected to achieve that. So I would like somebody who can do that, who's got a track record of doing that. That will be really, really good to see. Unfortunately, no, people who have all the attributes you want are going to cost more money, aren't they? So, you know, like you said, I have a lot of faith in the board of this club. And I feel that whatever decision they make, I'm going to back them. If it turns out to be the wrong one, then it does. But that's not what we've seen from them recently. So let's just see what happens.
Yeah. The thing is, there's obviously a lot of love for Matt. But the underlying is it's the support of the club. And yes, the person in post is the person we will support. And there's going to be a new person in post who we're going to now support. So yeah, hopefully it goes as we expect, and we can continue our tradition of backing our managers and sticking with them rather than following all the rest of the EFLs. I've tried to word my next sort of wrap up without sounding patronising, and I can't. But I just want to kind of like thank all the Sutton United supporters for being really like respectful and sensitive on all their comments. As I say, I know that sounds patronising. I don't mean it to be. There was a definite split over the last few months of Matt in, Matt out, and there was a bit of bands. No one kind of gloated and gone, "Oh yeah, we got what we want." And I think the overwhelming sentiment on the messages is a genuine sadness and disappointment that it's ended like this, which is really confusing a lot of EFL fans because we're bottom of the league by 6 points. We've just been thumped 8-0. Our manager's gone. It should be time for clubs celebrating and go, yeah, it got rid, but it's not. Everyone's just like, oh God, I'm gutted, which is confusing. And yeah, I know that, and I really appreciate it, and I don't want people to think I'm patronising, but it was just like, that was really, really important to me. But we will wrap it up. I hope it has made sense when I finally done the editing. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe to Sutton Podcast on social media. We would like to thank our sponsors, Lucky Star Gin. And today's mega panel, I am going to forget a name, or someone's not going to send a video, or someone else is going to extra video. But we had Andy K, Dan, Neil and Stuart last night. Today we've got Sarah, Gabriel and Alex. Some videos I've already had is Paul, Andy, Roger, Scott and Louis, and there's some others who said they're sending videos as well, so there may be some more videos in there. So it's going to be a long one. It is a massive bereavement counselling session and potentially a love letter to Matt Gray. But wish him absolutely all the best in whatever he does, and I'm sure if it's a fairly local club and Sutton are away or don't have a match, there'll be a lot of yellow shirts there supporting him as well. Thanks for your attention. Thanks to everyone for listening. I said this last week. Hopefully, I'll be in the bar at Mansfield. We'll see how that not at Mansfield, at home against Mansfield, and I'll grab some of you then. But take care, and we'll see you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.